I never thought the same stretch of pavement where I taught my kid to ride a wobbly pink bike would taste like metal and fear one day. But the night it happened, the air felt strange, heavy, like the neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for something none of us could name. And when that engine howl came screaming around the bend, I swear, even the porch light flinched. Some moments brand themselves into your memory so deep that years later, you can still feel the texture of that second before everything changed. This is one of those moments. And if you think you know how this story ends, trust me, you Dan single quotes T, that we live in Willow Ridge. You know the type of place. Tree-lined streets where the branches form tunnels of green in summer. Mailboxes with hand-painted numbers that someone's grandmother probably stenciled on a Sunday afternoon. Barbecues on Saturdays if the wind isn't acting up and carrying smoke into someone's screened porch. It's the kind of neighborhood where people still wave from their driveways and kids ride their bikes until the street lights flicker on. At least, that's what it used to be. My daughter Riley had just turned 18, tall and sharp as a fence post, with that kind of easy confidence that makes you think she's older until she laughs. And then you remember she's still your kid. She had her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak, which is either a blessing or a curse depending on who you ask. That combination made her fearless in ways that kept me up at night, even when I tried to pretend it didn't. She'd been streaming all week, calling out the clowns who'd been cruising around our neighborhood with magnetic badges and a light bar they probably bought at some discount auto shop. HOA Compliance Patrol, their doors said, like we'd asked for that. Like anyone in Willow Ridge had voted to have fake cops rolling through our streets, shining flashlights into yards at 10 o'clock at night, leaving threatening notes on windshields. I told her not every fight belongs on the internet, that some battles are better staged in daylight, with paper and names and signatures. The kind of warfare you wage in community centers and town halls. Not on social media where everyone's got an opinion and nobody's got accountability. But she's got my stubborn and her mom's sense of fairness. And that's a dangerous combination when you're 18 and convinced the world can be fixed with enough sunlight and witnesses. So there we were. It started small. It always does. A yellow envelope with no stamp, stuck between the slats of our mailbox like someone had delivered it in the middle of the night. Reminder, it said in blocky marker that looked like it came from someone who'd never learned cursive. Sidewalk must be cleared by 8 p.m. Non-compliance will incur a fine. We hadn't left a thing on the sidewalk but I checked, walked the whole length of our property line twice, looking for whatever invisible violation had triggered this. There was nothing, just concrete and grass and the chalk hopscotch court Riley had drawn for the neighbor's kids 3 weekends back. Next day, our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, got one for unauthorized lawn ornament. She doesn't even own a garden, no, just marigolds, bright yellow ones that she babies like they're her grandchildren. Someone apparently decided flowers counted as non-compliant decor. People laughed at first, the way you laugh at something absurd because laughing feels safer than admitting you're worried. Then the envelopes multiplied, and a black pickup began rolling by slow to slow, at hours when dogs lift their heads and even sprinklers sound guilty. One night, I saw a drone hovering over the cul-de-sac, its red eye blinking like some small, bored evil watching us from above. I stood in my driveway and watched it hang there, motionless, recording God knows what. Riley saw it too. She grabbed her phone and started filming it, narrating for her viewers like she was documenting some kind of invasion, which, in a way, she was. The picture of our quiet suburb got a crack in it right there. You know the kind I mean. Nothing dramatic, just a hairline fracture you can't unsee once you've seen it. The kind that makes you wonder how long it's been there, growing in the dark, waiting to split wide open. Riley set up her phone on a tripod like she was planting a flag. Let them drive by, she told her viewers, her voice steady and sure. Let's see how brave they are on camera. I wanted to be the dad who jokes and brings lemonade, the one who makes everything feel lighter just by showing up. But years in the teams rewired me for weather most folks don't check. I've learned to read pressure changes in a room, to notice when someone's weight shifts wrong, to catalog exits and angles without thinking about it. I told her, go inside if anything feels off, and keep your feet under you. Don't give strangers a reason. She rolled her eyes the way teenagers do when their parents say something both obvious and annoying, and I smiled to hide the part of me that was counting angles and distances, marking cover positions, noting which neighbors had their lights on. The third night, a different yellow envelope thumped through our mail slot. The paper inside wasn't a reminder. It was a Polaroid. Our porch. Our railing. Riley's tripod in the frame, positioned exactly where she'd had it 2 nights before. And on the white border, someone had scrawled in red pen, next time we knock. There's something about ink on physical paper that makes a threat feel heavier than pixels ever could. It's tangible, real, something you can hold in your hand and know that someone else held it too, that they stood close enough to your home to slide it through your door. I saved it in a Ziploc bag and didn't show Riley until morning. When I finally did, she read it, jaw tightening, then shrugged, like courage is just a sweater you put on. Bullies hate daylight, she said, so let's flood it. By then, the pickup had a reputation. An older F150 with matte black spray paint. The kind of DIY job where you can still see the texture of the spray pattern if you look close enough. It had a home-rigged siren that sounded like a dying raccoon, and red and blue flashers crooked on top, so the light skittered across windows in a way that made people step back before they remembered it wasn't legit. That's the thing about fake authority. It works until it doesn't, but while it's working, it's terrifying. One afternoon near the old strip mall on the edge of town, I saw 3 guys standing by that truck. The biggest one leaned against the tailgate like the weight of a rifle still lived on his shoulder. That particular stance you develop after carrying long guns for years. He turned to flick a cigarette, and the way he set his jaw hit me like a ghost walking out of the past. Cole Maddox. I knew him once, in places where the sun hit steel and the wind smelled like dust and diesel. He'd been a solid teammate then, the guy you trusted when things tilted sideways. The guy who'd say, "I've got your 6, read," and mean it. We'd pulled security together, breached doors together, shared mysteries in places where the locals didn't want us and the brass pretended to care. He was good people back then. Or, I thought he was. I eased my SUV forward before he saw me. And all the way home, his name rattled in the ashtray of my chest like loose change I couldn't spend. The past has a way of showing up when you least expect it, wearing a face you used to trust. I called an old friend who went private sector, a quiet man named Whitlow who can pull on threads without looking like he's touching the sweater, the kind of guy who knows people who know things and who doesn't ask questions when you need something off the books. He sent me a file that night. Traffic cam footage, timestamps, stills pulled from security cameras at gas stations and intersections. Cole, that same truck, the same 2 other guys. A broad-shouldered one with a shaved head who we'd later know as Price, and a thin, jittery one who looked like he sharpened his own teeth. The kind of guy whose energy makes you take a step back without knowing why. The notes said, Cole got sideways with the HOA over some property tax dispute a couple years back. Left with a grudge and a record of public disturbances, a couple of drunk and disorderly charges that got pleaded down. It didn't make him a monster. It did make him a powder keg looking for a match. The Sunday it all blew. The sky wore that hazy gold that makes even trash cans look like they belong in a painting. One of those perfect spring evenings where everything feels possible and safe. Riley set up for a quick update on her stream. 10 minutes, Dad, she called out, just to tell folks the city still hasn't called back. And I told her, fine, but keep the camera facing the street and the house to your back. I wanted her visible, protected by witnesses. Even if those witnesses were just people watching on their phones 1,000 miles away. I was inside, rinsing out a coffee mug. I remember the glare on the stainless steel sink, the spot I always miss, near the faucet no matter how many times I wipe it down. I remember thinking I needed to replace the weather stripping on the back door. Stupid little thoughts that your brain offers up when it doesn't know what's coming. Then our neighbor's dog barked. That hard, sharp warning bark that dogs reserve for when something's actually wrong. Not the mailman bark or the squirrel bark. The danger bark. The pickup came in gnashing the curb, the crooked lights rattling like loose teeth, engine howling like the driver wanted the whole block to hear his courage. Some men make noise to cover their fear. Some make noise because they've convinced themselves noise equals power. This was both. I called her name, Riley, sharp and loud, the way you shout when you need someone to move right now. She looked up from her phone, startled. Her weight shifted back, and her heel caught the porch step. One foot found nothing but air dot, and that truck did not slow. Time doesn't stretch. Not really, but it does forget to breathe. The bumper clipped her hip and spun her sideways like a rag doll, and the rear tire climbed both of her legs with a sound I will never get out of my bones. A wet crunch that doesn't belong in suburbs, that doesn't belong anywhere near your child. Her scream ripped out and then broke off into gasps, and I was already moving because that's what muscle memory is. For when thinking is a luxury you can't afford, I ran past the hedge, past the mailbox that still had our names painted on it from when Riley was 10. I planted my feet, took the stance I learned a lifetime ago, when everything you love fits behind one sightpost, and I fired once into the front left tire. The tire barked and peeled, rubber shredding, and turned that truck into a sulking beast, skidding sideways into Mrs. Leland's hydrangeas. Nosing into the dirt, the passenger door flew open, and Price tumbled out wearing a budget tactical vest. The kind you order online for $50, waving a sawed-off shotgun. The kind of weapon that promises stupid choices and bad luck. That says the person holding it doesn't care about what happens next. His tin badge flashed under our porch light. Crooked, shiny, bought off a website where you can also get novelty aprons and fake diplomas. Put the gun down. He barked into a bullhorn he hadn't even turned on properly. It squealed feedback on his own words and made him seem smaller, more ridiculous. Like a kid playing dress-up in his father's clothes. I lowered my Glock just enough to signal I wasn't the wild card here, and said, low and flat, drop it. EMS is on the way. Point that thing at anyone, and it ends ugly. He didn't drop it, but his wrists trembled, and that was enough to make him human again. Enough to tell me he didn't actually want to use it, that he was in over his head and starting to realize it. A voice crackled from inside the cab. Grainy, steady, familiar, like an old song you wish you could finish it. No witnesses. Cold. It wasn't the bark of a stranger. It was the command of a man who'd once coordinated corners with me, who'd trusted me to cover his movements while he cleared rooms. The voice of someone who'd saved my life once, in a place where bullets came through walls like they weren't even there. Hearing him say those words felt like betrayal and nostalgia twisted together, choking me. The driver cursed and reached under the seat for something. Later, we'd find a hacked-up flare launcher with a homemade canister, the kind of improvised weapon that speaks to too much time and too much anger. But he flinched hard when I punched around into the dirt by the blown tire and screamed, hands where I can see them. Now, neighbors were on porches now, phones out, voices calling to each other. Sirens clawed closer through the warm air, that rising wail that means help is coming but not fast enough. Riley's phone, thrown from her hand when the truck hit her, lay in the grass still streaming. Our little street suddenly alive with 1,000 strangers watching, recording, bearing witness to something that shouldn't happen in places like this. The cruisers swung in hard, lights splashing red and blue across our shutters. And 2 uniforms took over like they were grateful nothing had escalated beyond salvage. Price gave up in a clatter of steel, the shotgun hitting the ground, his hands going up. The driver came out with his hands high too, eyes cutting toward, a handheld radio on the seat like it might grow legs and run for him. When they cuffed them both, I finally let the muzzle point at the ground. The adrenaline I'd been holding back went looking for an exit route, flooding my system, making my hands shake harder than they had when I was pulling the trigger. Riley's face had gone white, lips trembling, both legs bent at wrong angles that made the world flicker at the edges. I knelt beside her and pressed a hand to her shoulder, pressed back tears that weren't going to help either of us. Hey kiddo, hey, I'm right here. Breathe for me, we've got you. Her eyes found mine, confused, scared, but still present, still fighting. Dad, she whispered, and her voice cracked on that single syllable in a way that nearly broke me. They took her in the first ambulance, and I watched the taillights until they curved out of the block, carrying my daughter away to surgeons and x-rays and a recovery I couldn't control. And then I stood in my driveway with a weapon I didn't want to be holding, in a hole where my comm used to live. That handheld radio on the seat crackled one more time, static, then, Price, report, now, and then, it went dead. Like whoever was on the other end finally understood the game was over. You'd think that would be the end of the night. It wasn't. Trouble rarely clocks out at a decent hour. And these guys had more than just the truck and the 2 we'd caught. An officer named Alvarez. Steady eyes, voice like sand, smoothed by water, kept me looped in as they tagged evidence. She treated me like someone who understood procedure, not like a problem that needed managing. A sergeant in a rumpled uniform asked me questions with a pen that didn't look like it wanted to be there, clicking it over and over like a nervous tell. So we're talking a homeowner's beef that got heated, he said, like he was trying to minimize it before it hit his paperwork. I kept my voice level because rage closes doors you need open. We're talking felony assault, impersonation of law enforcement, and conspiracy. Sergeant, that's not a noisy barbecue. He wrote something down, nodded slowly, and his pen stopped clicking. Around 10 o'clock, a second truck, older and dented, glided to a stop near the playground without headlights. 2 shadows slipped through the hedges, moving with purpose. Someone who didn't know better might have missed them entirely. I called it in and met Alvarez at the curb. We moved toward, the swings slow, the orange street lamp above us humming like a bad habit. The playground felt wrong at night, the swings hanging still, the slide gleaming dull under weak light. A metallic clack cut the quiet, sharp mechanical. Alvarez's flashlight found him, the thin one. His name was Denton, we'd learn later. Crouched behind the merry-go-round with a pipe launcher that looked like he'd built it in a basement, all duct tape and spite. Drop it, Alvarez barked, her service weapon trained center mass. He fired instead. The canister hit her cruiser and painted a scorched black bruise on the blue paint. Smoke billowing out, acrid and chemical. A branch above his head snapped when my round went through it, bark exploding, and he flinched just long enough for me to close the distance. I grabbed his elbow, and we both ate bark and dirt before Alvarez cuffed him, her knee in his back, her voice steady, as she read him his rights. That's when the slow clap came from the slide. Mocking, deliberate. Cole stepped into the light with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Hands up like he was tired of arguing with gravity. Easy, Mason, he said, and everything in me tried not to remember a night in a different country when he'd said my name the same way. When ahead meant, I'm here, I've got you, we're getting out of this. Didn't think I'd find you playing neighborhood watch, he added, like this was all some kind of joke we'd laugh about later over beers. I looked at him and felt the hours stack up between us. The flights home, the bad coffee in airport terminals, the promises we'd made to each other about what we'd do when we got back to the world. You ran over my kid, I said. Quiet, because quiet travels farther than shouting. Don't dress it in any other language. The grin flickered. She wasn't supposed to get hurt. We were making a point. People around here forgot what order looks like. I took a step forward and put the weight of my words where he could feel it. Order doesn't come on four wheels with a bumper. Cole, you know that. You used to know that. He shrugged, a little tilt that said, I used to know a lot of things. Maybe I wanted to forget. Sirens approached again, white light bouncing off vinyl swings and metal chains. Walk away, I told him, keeping my voice even, hands visible. Let the uniforms take your story. He didn't. He took the dark alley like he'd already seen the map, like he'd planned his escape route before he even showed up. Some part of him was still tactical, still running on training even when everything else had gone sideways. They caught him 3 blocks away, trying to hotwire a sedan behind a closed dry cleaner. He didn't resist when they cuffed him, just stared at the ground like he was finally seeing what he'd become. The next morning, I spread evidence across our kitchen table the way I used to spread maps on a plywood floor overseas, careful, methodical, hungry for seams I could pry apart. Yellow envelopes with their blocky threats, Polaroids of our porch, screenshots of Riley's stream, still frames of the handheld radio, a photo of the flare launcher now tagged in a clear evidence bag. I put it all on a flash drive and made 2 backups, because experience teaches you what fails when pressure arrives. Technology breaks, files corrupt, but if you have 3 copies, at least one survives. Captain Dorsey, at the precinct, listened with his jaw clenched, the kind of tension that says he's angry but trying to stay professional. He reviewed everything I brought him, watched the stream footage twice, and finally said the words I needed to hear. We'll fast-track this to the DA. We'll issue a warrant on Maddox by end of business today. For the first time since tires hit bone, I felt a sliver of the world realign. I sat with a local reporter in the hospital cafeteria that afternoon, a woman named Tess with a notepad and eyes that didn't look away during the painful details. Most reporters flinch. She didn't. This isn't HOA drama, I told her. It's a racket with badges and threats. She printed it clean. No sensational garnish. No embellishment. Just the facts laid out in a way that made people pay attention. And within a day, people in Willow Ridge stopped whispering and started talking. They sent in their stories. Spray-painted slurs on garage doors. Smashed trash lids, cash demands tucked into fence posts, photographs of the black truck parked outside homes at 2 in the morning. The puzzle stopped pretending to be scattered pieces and became a picture. When the first court date rolled around, the courthouse smelled like lemon polish and old wood and dust that had been there longer than any of us. Riley insisted on coming, braces on both legs, signatures from friends and nurses marking up the casts like a victory banner. She moved slow but steady, and the crowd parted in that way crowds do when respect stands up inside them. Price looked smaller in a jumpsuit. The thin one, Denton, smaller still. Like all the bravado had leaked out once the costumes came off. Cole walked in last, and his eyes finally understood the math. The courtroom was packed. The evidence was overwhelming. And the person he used to be was sitting across from him, testifying. The prosecutor walked everyone through the pictures, the video, the audio. Finish it. No witnesses. Cole's voice played through the speakers, and the jury leaned forward in unison. As if drawn by a string. Cole tried to pitch it as community protection gone wrong, tried to frame it as concerned citizens taking action when the authorities wouldn't. Like that euphemism could cover tread marks on a teenager's legs and threats delivered to families in their homes. Like anyone in that courtroom was stupid enough to buy it. The medical report did its own talking. To compound fractures, torn ligaments, months of physical therapy ahead. So did the Polaroids with their red pen threats. So did the testimony from neighbors who'd been harassed, intimidated, extorted. The verdict landed hard and simple. Cole Maddox, guilty on aggravated assault, conspiracy, child endangerment. Price and Denton, guilty on impersonating law enforcement, reckless endangerment, harassment. 15 years for Cole, 10 apiece for the other 2. The gavel felt like a door closing on a room you hope your grandkids never have to see. What followed wasn't a montage. It was work. Riley did her physical therapy like it was a job she'd been hired for, grimacing through the pain, laughing when she could, sometimes cussing when the exercises pushed her past what felt possible, counting tiny victories you don't notice unless you've lost them, standing without help, walking 10 steps, walking 20, climbing stairs. The casts came off, braces went on, then the braces came off. Scars turned from angry red to the quieter color of stories you survive and carry with you. The HOA cleaned house. Emergency elections brought in new leadership. People who actually lived in the neighborhood and cared about it beyond property values. Real security cameras went up, the kind that send footage to servers that can't be bullied or bribed. The pickup engine sound still made folks tense for a while. Funny how a noise can move in rent-free and refuse to leave. But gradually, people went back to playing catch in the street and talking loud on porches, just to prove that noise is not the same as danger. One evening in spring, Riley and I walked slow down to the retention pond at the end of our block. The sky went sherbet at the edges, orange and pink, bleeding into purple. and the ducks made their little urgent noises like they were late for a meeting they'd scheduled weeks ago. Riley slipped her arm through mine, her limp soft now, more of a signature than a limitation. You think it's over? She asked. I thought about the clack of a Polaroid ejecting, a radio hissing orders through static, a face under a street lamp that used to mean safety and backup, now meaning something else entirely. Almost, I said, honest as I know how to be. Some things heal slower than bones, but we're getting there. She nodded and leaned her head on my shoulder for just a second before pulling back. You should talk about it, Dad, not just to me. People need to hear what silence buys and what evidence buys. She was right. She's right a lot. Don't tell her I said that, so I'm telling you now. Not because I want to relive the worst sound I've ever heard. Not because I want medals for doing what any father would do. But because neighborhoods like ours don't break free of fear by accident. It took Riley's stubborn camera and my training and a dozen neighbors who chose to step out from behind their blinds and say, yes, that happened to me too. It took a cop who didn't flinch when her cruiser got scorched and a captain who put pen to paper. It took a reporter who wrote it straight. It took a judge with a steady voice and a jury that paid attention. It took faith that the system, when you light it up from all sides, still works better than men with cheap badges and loud engines. I know someone's going to ask about the gun. I'm not going to preach at you. Here's what I'll say. Training buys you time, and time buys you better choices. I shot a tire because I didn't want to shoot a man. I shot dirt because I wanted hands where I could see them. Because once you shoot a person, you can't take it back. And I've seen enough of what that looks like to know it's a last resort. There's a line between defense and vengeance. And it's thinner than you hope when your child is screaming at your feet. I'm not claiming perfection. I'm telling you, I slept that night knowing nobody else went to the hospital because of me. That matters. That has to matter. If you've got a story about a neighborhood bully, HOA, or otherwise, if you've had to draw your own lines when help took its time, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. If you think I handled it wrong, say that too. Talk to me about what order means where you live, who gets to claim that word, and where the community gets to push back. Share this with the one person in your circle who keeps quiet because they think speaking up won't matter. It does. It always has. And if you're watching this from a porch like mine, with a little hum in the air and the smell of grass and dinner cooking somewhere near, do me a favor. Check on your neighbors. Learn their names. Make a plan for the nights when the world forgets to be soft. Sometimes justice needs more than a badge to show up. Sometimes it needs a camera, a stack of receipts, a town fed up with fear, and a dad who refuses to step aside when a truck comes roaring through a place that should be safe.